Аз съм Стефан Кръстев, това е Ника Хорвиц. Двамата представяме тази вечер един съвместен проект, който се казва Американски бар и става дума за американски бар в България, чисто и просто казано. Преди да продължа, бих искал да питам дали е възможно дали е възможно да говорим на английски или някой ще има нужда от превод. Ако има нужда от превод, ще превеждаме всичко на български. Но ако е възможно да говорим само на английски, за да спестим време в представянето. Има ли проблем да говорим на? Добре, благодаря. Ако в някой момент някой почувства проблем с разбирането, нека да не се притеснява да каже, ще минем на български. Не искам никой да остане изолиран. So I switched to English. I just said that this is the presentation of the project American Bar, which is exploration of places, bar, restaurants, local pubs in Bulgaria which bear names related somehow to American places or places in America which have iconic status like Manhattan, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, California, and many others. This is a project done by an American and a Bulgarian. And maybe we should present ourselves a little bit before we continue. Okay.
Hello, I'm Nika Horvitz, and yeah, I'm coming from Seattle, Washington. Stefan and I have known each other for a while, and he brought up this idea to me a while ago, and I always had thought about it and liked it. I am a writer and a photographer sort of by hobby and not very technically experienced, so this was a new thing for me. In Seattle, I work as a waitress at my family's restaurant and bar, so this project is also sort of relevant to me on that level. But a lot of people have asked me while I've been here, why did I come to Bulgaria to do this project? And in fact, I think it was less about Bulgaria for me and has become more about Bulgaria over the time, but more about just sort of the ideas and questions that the project brings up. So yeah, thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Red House for having us. I think we were going to talk a little bit about the initial research for the project.
Yeah, just to say some words about myself. I'm an anthropologist by background. I've been interested in this topic. Actually, it was quite personal thing. In the town where my parents spend a lot of time, Kaofe, there is one cafe in the main square called California, and it always struck me as something very unusual. And then I thought that maybe it's not the only place in Bulgaria where I have seen such a name for a bar or a place. I searched a little bit, asked different friends, and everyone was coming up with such a name coming from their local place. And then I proposed this idea to Nika, and when she applied for a grant for Americans traveling abroad to do artistic and research projects. So when we got the grant, we started kind of more serious research about such places in Bulgaria. I actually started looking through catalogs of businesses in Bulgaria, looking through hundreds and thousands of names and places, and it really turned out that it's not just an intuition. There was really a moment when this places related to American realities were really abundant. Compared to other geographical locations, they're like, let's say, 10% of all the names of bars and restaurants could be related somehow to America. So it's not just something by chance, or there's something more to it. So when we started compiling lists of such places, so we could plan somehow a practical way to approach them, we initially thought that we wouldn't find enough, but then we ended up with a list of 120 places all around Bulgaria, of which we had to choose a number which was realistic to visit and try to document in the short time that we have with this project. Maybe we can show the...
I can. So tonight we have kind of a very in-process presentation, which I hope will be okay. We traveled around for 3-ish weeks with a little break, and we went to a lot of places. Some of them worked out and some of them didn't. Some of them we got there and they were closed, or some people didn't want to talk to us. And our tactic was just to go and present our project to them and see if they were interested in having a conversation with us and take some pictures. So what we have now is a lot of interviews, of which we've transcribed some, and digital photos that we'll be showing tonight. And then also I have a lot of film photos that I haven't developed yet. So we made a slideshow of kind of a first attempt at pairing some of those images and some of that text. And we're not quite sure what we'll end up doing with the materials, but this is what we have for now. And it is, yeah, I guess we have a paragraph from, oops. Here it goes. An early paragraph of writing that was sort of some language from the first idea that this came from. So that was a documentation of the many small-town bars, which didn't turn out to all be small-town bars, scattered across Bulgaria named after famous American places. What is interesting about these venues is the contrast between their names and their interiors. Businesses maintained by often rural people who have rarely traveled far from their modest hometowns, environments that could not be further from the realities their names aspired to. Instead, these names each represent a dream or a declaration of a dream, born out of filtered and mediated knowledge and creating a type of expressions of foreign symbols, notions of America that come from films, books, magazines, media, etc. I think we both agree that this was not, in lots of ways, didn't turn out to be what we found, but it's just a starting point.
I mean, yeah, obviously now from looking back from already doing some research and real documentation, this looks like a very limited concept. And you'll see that many of the places would not fit this description, and many times we were surprised by the results. But I'm not going to deconstruct this at this moment. I just wanted to show it to you what was the initial point and how our limited initial point was.
So then also, as we went along, we kind of changed our strategy a little bit. At first we didn't really have questions laid out, and we kind of developed a few eventually. So these are what we ended up asking people. Where did the name of your business come from? When did it open? How long have you worked here? Do you like your job? Have you been to the US? Do you want to go? What do you think of the US? What do you think when you imagine the place that your business is named after? How do you imagine Bulgaria in comparison to other places? Do you like to live here? Would you like to move or visit somewhere else in particular? How is business going? How has your town city changed in the last 15 to 20 years? And do you believe in the American dream? So now we have about 10 minutes of images and text, and I apologize for the 10 minutes of silence.
We are going to show you some photos and some parts of the interviews that we did. We didn't want to make it more, or we didn't want to attempt any kind of theoretization at this time, because it's really, we finished the trip last week. So it's really bits and pieces of impressions that we got along the way. And actually we would kind of like to have it given to you without too much commentary. We would reserve the time for commenting on what we see after we see the slideshow. So we would really like to have your thoughts and impressions about the things that we see. The slideshow is something like 5 to 10 minutes. Some of the captions are kind of longish, but we will play it again, so don't worry if you don't manage to read all the things written under the photos on the first time. We will play it, and we will turn the lights off during this play. Yeah, these are just part of the images that we have, and these are just digital ones. Also, there are others on film, and yeah, these are parts of the interviews. But we try to capture the variety of places that we have found along the way. As you can see, there are different places, bars in small villages, which are very modest in the way they are decorated, their interiors, and other ones which are kind of aspiring to more modern customers. And also the motivations of why people have chosen this name, to name these bars, are quite different. Sometimes you'd have a real conscious connection between the bar and the place in America to which it relates. Sometimes the relation is might be mediated through some very personal details, as the name of someone's wife or the name of the owner themselves. Otherwise, the reason why a bar is named like this is just lost in the time. I mean, what became obvious to me when we started visiting these places is that this phenomenon is something which the explosion of these names was obviously in the 90s. Many of the people we talked to would refer to the beginning of their place somewhere in 20 years ago. And since then, many of the places lost changed their owners. The new owners would often don't know the real story behind the name or the real motives of the people who named the place like this. But quite often they would keep the name because it has acquired a reputation and it's not easy to change it, as it was in the case of Schumann Arizona Lounge, where the young guy who was the manager just simply wanted to change the name, but it was impossible because the reputation of the place was bigger than any change they could execute. So it was kind of interesting also to think about how a name can be bigger than the motivation of the people, and how the relationship between a name and people who are frequenting this place is not one which is direct. So there is many times a tension between the name and the places and the people and the practices they're doing inside these places. And the other thing that I think became quite obvious is that, yeah, this tension that I mentioned, people would often feel tensed when they would be questioned about why a place is named like after an American place, and they would try to distance themselves. Sometimes it would be because they have become, for some reason, critical about America and what is associated with America in today's world. Like in several cases, people would be very quick to tell us that they don't like Americans anymore, and naming this place with American name was a mistake, and they want to change it with something new. Otherwise, it was probably just indicating some kind of a change in the general attitude, like these names now sound kind of too direct, too naive to many of the people, and they would go for something which is much more related to some realities of Bulgaria, like seeking for some more traditional things, or I don't know. And many times what I think we encountered is this desire, this expressed desire for the authentic. Many times people who are owning these places are very concerned with preserving what is Bulgarian, what they perceive as authentic, real, and they are somehow much more related to the localities in which they are than I would previously thought when we started this project. I don't know if you want to say.
Yeah, I think that I was struck by how often it seemed that the name was sort of intended for someone else and not maybe the person who named it, like some idea of what a small community would, how they would react to that name. And it seemed like most of the time that intention maybe wasn't realized. And now the names are either sort of funny in retrospect or people really didn't know anymore, was my general impression.
And one more thing that I kind of felt about naming places after American localities, as we written in the beginning, my expectation was that this is kind of a dream to aspiration for some place which is far away from the everyday reality. And as I said, at least the real situation is very much rooted in the everyday reality. These people are not neglecting what is the local situation in which they are rooted. They're with this name, they're kind of making a claim of being equally valuable as this place of value in America is. Like these places are just universal symbols of good, wealth, and things to which everyone aspires, and they kind of circulate detached from their physical qualities and the American culture. I think naming a place like this is just like a claim of these people to be on equal foot with everyone in this world that we inhabit. That's why there is no conflict between California and California, for example. It's just an expression of desire to be local and global at the same time.
Yeah, and almost everyone, I think, the majority of people at least, really expressed that where they lived was sort of, they wanted to be there. That was surprising to me, not because I didn't expect that from here, but because I don't experience that in the US, really. I mean, I feel like people I know are always thinking of where else to go. So that was sort of striking to me to have a lot of conversations with people about feeling very rooted where they were. It was nice to hear. Maybe we could open up for questions if anybody has them, or I don't know.
Yeah. We'll be glad for any kinds of questions, comments, impressions. We are in the stage where we are kind of really needing feedback, so we'll be very glad.
Stefan, you mentioned that you were digging in some data, like looking for registers. You were looking for registers of the names with American origin. Is it possible to quantify this? I mean, is it possible to see how in the years this trend is declining, and to see where was really the peak and when this started declining? Eventually, to find out why this became more popular, and
maybe if, so far we didn't have time to do this kind of very thorough research. But maybe it's possible to look by the names of, by the years when these places are registered. But mostly in these records it was just the names and the owners and the places where, and the addresses. So I'm not sure, we have to look more about this.
Did you meet by incident some other names of like, I don't know, European locations or other part of, yeah? Like bistro, I don't know, Amsterdam.
Yeah. We met, but really much less. Like, I cannot prove it with numbers, but it was considerably less than the American ones.
I also had sort of suspicions before we started. We had conversations where I was saying, you know, every place has places named after other places. And usually, you know, it's an Italian restaurant has an Italian name, or I think what was maybe striking about these places is that most of them were just like were just a town bar. They didn't really have anything thematic about them, which I think relates to that common language idea of the names of US locations, these sort of iconic places that maybe everybody has owned. There was a time at least when people felt everyone sort of had a claim to those names. Yeah, less other names than this.
And was there any particular interest of these people seeing a real American in their place? Like
not really.
asking you some questions about America, about American culture, something?
Mostly asking me what I thought of Bulgaria. And a few, the manager at Arizona Lounge wanted to know if the club scene was different in the US. I think there was a little bit more enthusiasm from people with the more kind of lounge places. But I think we both expected maybe there would be more of that. It was partially my fault. I was really shy the whole time.
I think maybe, yeah, this was one of the surprises that I had, that I thought that maybe having a person from America would be oftentimes a starting point for a conversation and natural exchange of comparisons, how it is here, how it is there, but actually my feeling was that many times it created more tension than, or at least in the beginning of the conversation, people felt like they were tested. Like, now you have a real American here in your place, prove that you are really Colorado or Arizona. So they would feel like a little bit, you know, it has nothing to do with Arizona, we just named it like this. But then I think gradually with the conversation and feeling more relaxed, I think there was an interest growing and questions. Yeah. And the questions.
Mine is mostly about methodologies. Do you frame the project as a scholarly/art project? And how extensive were your interviews? Were you mostly interested in just gathering people's opinions, or did you sometimes challenge what they expressed?
Can you repeat, sorry, because I didn't hear it.
Okay, so my question is about methodology and how you frame your project. Do you see it as an anthropological project / art photography project, which is it's a great fun, by the way. And the second part of my question is, how extensive were your interviews with these people, and did you ever challenge perhaps some of the views that maybe from an American point of view were, or at least there was another side to the story?
Well, I think that on the first question, it's probably a really not strictly anthropological project, because it's very short. First, it's just it took place within a month, and we spent really short time within each place in a matter of 1 day or 2 days. So it's like really impressions which are going on the surface and trying to capture something which is possible to be captured just from one meeting with these people. So of course it cannot really claim some real depth in the classical anthropological sense. It's it's more of a documentation, and it's also what each one of us could bring into this project. I'm kind of more into anthropological background, while Nika is kind of more art and writer. It was just trying to document a phenomenon which is not so probably known so far, and also, as we see, it's disappearing. These places are not going to exist in several years from now. And I wouldn't say that we were trying to challenge them too much. I think what we tried to do was try to understand their situation and their stories, and, you know, present them. Thanks.
Yeah, I also think that maybe because we were sort of looking at it from more of a framework of hearing stories than finding something specific out, that I know that I didn't really feel in the mindset of challenging anyone. Maybe because the idea is sort of about imagining something, even if that's a negative perspective, even if someone no longer, once had a feeling about the US and now has changed it. I think even just the evolution of that thought is interesting to me over time, and yeah, it was great to hear all of those, and I think as we collected them, they kind of built to form some bigger story combined.
Thank you.
Did you have an idea to interview also the customers? Because these are also the people who go to an American place. They might have a story too.
Well, it's true that in most places we were mainly looking for the owners, trying to find an answer to the main dilemma, why this place after all. I mean, this is something that we would have done differently if we had more time to just spend in a place and get to know the customers and talk to them more extensively and learn more about them. So far, we didn't do this within this project.
Colorado.
Yeah, in some places actually, yes. In some places we could spend more time and to be engaged in conversations with people, but yeah, we didn't do it on every place. Our main focus were the owners and people working there.
Also, in most places, there really weren't very many customers. I mean, most places were pretty empty. I would have really liked to have talked to some customers. In the Hollywood place, for instance, it was almost all teenagers, and I thought that would have been great. We didn't really have time, but I think it would be a nice addition, for sure. The older guy who's talking about calling people Chinese in the Colorado place is a customer, and in some ways, he was one of our favorite encounters, for sure.
Okay.
American names of, in my opinion, American names of these entertainment places maybe for relaxing are connected with, it told just a minute, connected with teenagers. And did you investigate if there are some distributors of drugs and other things forbidden from governments? And another, I think, not totally positive, because these places can be created for positive things, but along these positive things, maybe there are some negative features. And would you tell us, did you investigate? Because as I've read, this place is Los Angeles, not Los Angeles, Las Vegas, are connected with gambling. And if children, teenagers visit these places, they are informed about gambling, and they will be interested in gambling and other drugs, etc. Because some of these names are negative in our mind in advance.
We didn't do a real criminal research to be certain if there are drugs sold in these places or not. But this topic was raised several times by the people we talked with, people who worked in these places and their owners, and all of them, they were very much concerned to not let this happen. Actually, they were having problems with some of their customers, teenagers especially, who would consume drugs and they would try to not let them do so. I don't think any of these places was like a place where it was a policy of the owners to provide drugs to people visiting them. And the thing about gambling in Las Vegas, we actually deliberately excluded all the places in Bulgaria which are just gambling houses named Las Vegas, because for us this connection was too obvious and it wasn't very interesting to see why these places are named Las Vegas. I mean, it's kind of obvious. The one Las Vegas that we included in this selection was a place which was different. It was not a gambling place. Okay. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you and to invite you for a glass of wine. Thanks again for your attention.
Thank you.